party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
Look into my eyes.
What if I told you that there was a Ghost Rider game based on the 2007 movie that was heavily inspired by Devil May Cry and God of War? Originally released in 2007 for the PlayStation 2, the PSP and the Game Boy Advance, this hack and slash game follows the story of the movie with Nicolas Cage reprising his role as Johnny. Wait, what? That's definitely not Nicolas Cage. And why is Blade even here? Okay, so the game loosely follows the story of the movie. I guess there was no money for Nicolas Cage. I guess you really don't need an excuse to slap Blade on your game. But yeah, I feel like this is going to tell you that the game was done on a very small budget. You know, like it happens with most movie tie-ins. I really don't like shaming low budget games for not having super fancy cutscenes. Like, you know, like the ones you can see on Marvel Ultimate Alliance. But the cutscenes in this game are really poorly made and do a terrible job of keeping the player interest in the story. So that's all I'm going to say today about the story of this game. I said before that the game was heavily inspired by DMC because, well, you have a style meter, you get a different rank after each mission depending on your performance, you can juggle enemies in the air, even the screen transition looks a lot like the ones in DMC. And the game has a really DMC1 vibe to it. But the combat itself doesn't even get close to what DMC is. In fact, it feels more like your traditional hack and slash. It definitely feels more like a God of War clone than a DMC clone. During combat, you can use the chains or you can use hand-to-hand combat to create combos using different combinations. And there is also a grab attack that you can use to finish certain enemies off. It's pretty much just your standard quick time event finisher. If you played hack and slash before, then you will feel right at home because yeah, this really feels like your God of War quick time event finisher. The defensive options in this game are a block button, which you can also use to perform some special attacks, and you can also dodge. But I feel like the lack of a lock-on button really hurts the combat, especially when facing multiple enemies. Yeah, I'm not really sure why there is no way to lock on to enemies. But yeah, that was definitely a wasted opportunity to make the combat more interesting. There is also the shotgun, but it uses part of your double trigger, your retribution energy, which you can also use to enter retribution mode, which increases your power during a small amount of time. But also it lets you perform Ghost Rider's signature move, the Penance Stare, to finish any enemy, well, except boss fights. But yeah, it's pretty much a one kill on most enemies in the game. And then you have a special attack that deals a lot of damage to every enemy on screen. It looks really cool.
The innocence will be avenged! Away! Tear them down!
So unlike other hack and slash games, there are no extra weapons, but you can unlock extra combos and special attacks on the upgrade menu. And you have three different options: fire combos, light combos, and heavy combos. But I think it would have made more sense to have a list where with every attack, letting the player choose what moves to unlock. You can also upgrade your health bar, the shotgun damage, get more retribution energy. You can also upgrade the bike fireballs, but none of this really matters because you can pretty much unlock every attack and character upgrade like halfway through the game. I mean, you can use the spare resource to buy the extra content, but yeah, it's not like your decisions matter much here. The level design in this game is non-existent. There are no puzzles, almost nothing to interact on the scenery outside of recovering health by standing next to fire. There are no collectibles since you pretty much unlock them on the upgrade menu, and just nothing to do outside of going from point A to point B. Personally, I don't see that as a bad thing. Like if you just want the combat, you are going to be happy, but if you expect something else like being able to explore or anything like that, then yeah, maybe this game is not going to be for you. The enemy variety in this game is surprisingly nice. The only ones I end up hating here are the flying enemies and the rocket launcher dudes who can hit you from off screen, which can get really annoying. But yeah, the rule number one of this game is to always take care of the ranged enemies first. The game has some special enemies who you can only damage after reaching a certain style level. Luckily, you only have to hit them once to break the shield, but even then it can be really frustrating since getting hit once resets your style, and that also includes getting hit by those annoying ranged enemies. So yeah, it still feels like a nice addition to the game. Like I think it's something cool, and it makes the combat a bit more interesting. I think the next time they tried to do something like this was the DMC game made by Ninja Theory in 2013. I feel like the game for the most part stays interesting from start to finish, mostly because you can finish the game in like 3-4 hours. It's really a short game. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but I feel like in this case it was a good idea to keep the length of the game short rather than trying to pad the game, by including filler levels or anything like that. But yeah, you can finish the game in one sitting, though I think it's a shame that there is no new game plus or any, you have no way to select levels. So once you are done with the game, that's pretty much it. You need to start a new game. Oh man, I hope you guys enjoyed the bike levels, cause they pretty much make like 30% of the campaign. I think it's a bit more, but they do a good job of letting the player take a break from the constant combat. It definitely takes some time getting used to the bike controls, so don't be surprised if you hate those missions at first. Personally, I like how the bike feels. Like it really feels like it has weight. Unlike most action adventure games who also feature driving sections where it feels like, you are just floating around.
I know you don't want me here, but you really could have been more subtle about it.
The combat on the bike is definitely basic. You have the melee attack, you also have a range attack that you can upgrade to fire 3 fireballs. There is also a slide that looks really cool, and later in the game you can unlock a double jump and a turbo. The sense of speed is fine, but if you are looking for something like Need for Speed or Burnout here, I feel like you are going to feel disappointed. There are only 2 boss fights during the bike sections, and for the most part I feel like the bike levels are on the easy side, but it's nice to see that they try to do something more. They did more than the bare minimum with those levels, but I definitely see why a lot of people ended up disliking the bike sections. Yeah, they are definitely not for everyone. I've seen some of the reviews, and a lot of people complaining about the bike feeling awkward to control. But yeah, me personally, I like them. But I understand why some other people were not really fans of those sections. And then we have the boss fights. I feel like this is one of the weakest aspects of the game. The boss fights in this game really made me appreciate games like Metal Gear Rising and Devil May Cry even more. If you have experience playing hack and slash games, then you know that boss fights are usually the highlight of the experience. Sadly, in this game, they are far from being the highlight of the experience. There are 2 types of boss fights here. You have the real boss fights, like the final boss, and then you have mini bosses that later become normal enemies. And we're going to start with the mini bosses. The whole point of having the player fight a boss and later making that boss a normal enemy is to make the player feel strong, like they are getting better at the game by defeating an enemy that previously felt like a challenge. But the issue here is that most of those bosses, they become normal enemies like 5 minutes after beating them for the first time. So there is really no sense of accomplishment when beating some of those bosses. And then we have what I call the real boss fights. And to be honest, there are only like 5 of them, and most of them just feel meh. We have 2 bike bosses, Vengeance and Blackout, and then we have Lilith, Scarecrow, and Blackheart. Lilith is really boring. Basically, you just need to avoid the lightning attacks and wait for her shield to disappear before you can deal damage. And you think that having a fight on the top of a train will make the fight more exciting, but no, it just feels just generic. Scarecrow, on the other hand, clearly had more effort. You need to keep an eye for when he disappears, but for the most part, he just feels like another tough enemy with a bunch of minions. But unlike Lilith, at least it feels like you're interacting with the boss rather than just waiting for, for the shield to disappear before you can deal damage. We have Blackheart as the final boss. Spoiler, I know, but he feels extremely uninspired. It's like a poor man version of a God of War boss fight. Truly, it definitely feels like a very underwhelming way to end the game. It's just your generic giant monster that you can only defeat by avoiding a few slow and basic attacks. I feel like my favorite boss fight of the game was Scarecrow, or the boss fight with Vengeance on the bike. That one was quite cool. But yeah, boss fights in the game, yeah, they are just okay, nothing really special. Finishing the game once lets you unlock cheats, like invincibility, infinite magic, being able to kill enemies in one hit. But there is also a turbo mode. It's pretty much the same as the one in the Devil May Cry games. That one is for all of you guys that think the base game is just too slow. There is also a hard mode, which is pretty much like the Dante Mosaic version of this game, and you can also unlock a few extra skins, with the Ghost Rider Classic being locked behind extreme mode. But you can use cheat codes on extreme mode, so if you don't want to stress yourself too much, you can just use cheats, and then it becomes very easy to unlock the classic Ghost Rider skin. Since there is no way to select the level you want to play, you pretty much need to start a new game if you want to play with any of the new skins. Also, each skin has a different bike, which is a very nice touch. Also, since the game is too short, it's like pretty much 4 hours long, I guess you can use the different skins as an excuse to replay the game from stage 1. Also, on the Caretaker shop, you can also unlock different materials such as comics, content from the movie, and there are even some behind the scene videos that provide insight on how the game was made. Those are really cool.
Brought some help. This is Blade. Time to hit the road, ladies.
So once you finish the main story, you can play as the Daywalker itself, Blade. Yeah, he's actually more than a skin. I mean, he comes with his own unique moveset. So yeah, I guess you can say that Blade is pretty much the Virgil of the Ghost Rider universe.
I'm coming in. Any unholy fools want to try and stop me? Let's dance.
But the main difference between Ghost Rider and Blade, outside of the moveset, is that Blade can't use magic or the double trigger, so you're pretty much stuck with with basic combos to finish enemies. Also, he can only recover HP during the quick time events. And when you think about it, Blade mode is sort of like kind of feels like a bit more difficult than playing with Ghost Rider, so he kind of feels like an extra challenge, which is sort of like the opposite of Virgil on the DMC, because, well, Virgil has always been very, very OP on DMC. Also, something very important is that there are no new cutscenes or story when playing with Blade, and some of the in-game cutscenes, yeah, they look super goofy if you are using Blade. Now, the PSP version is very unique. It came with a racing mode that lets you play with many different characters from the game, like Blade, Blackheart, Johnny Blaze, and even the Caretaker. Sadly, the Caretaker, you are going to get the human version of the Caretaker and not the cool Ghost Rider version from the movie. But there are different stages like the Avengers phase or the Daily Bugle. It even has power-ups and 3 different game modes. So yeah, you can say this is pretty much the Ghost Rider version of Mario Kart. It's definitely a nice distraction from the main campaign. But I feel like the biggest difference between both versions of the game is on the main campaign, where instead of collecting souls from enemies to upgrade your character, you get skulls by completely different challenge. Yeah, each level now has 3 different skulls, 3 different challenges, and you can even select and replay missions, to collect the skulls you are missing. Not really sure why the PSP version got this treatment, but I feel like this type of character progression is definitely better than what we got on the PS2 version. Plus, it makes the game a lot more replayable because it really gives you a reason to go back and replay levels. Alright everyone, so we're at the end. What are the conclusions here? Is this a fun game? Absolutely. Is this some sort of like hidden masterpiece? Absolutely not. I remember playing this game like 10 years ago and having a lot of fun. And even playing this game today, I still have a lot of fun. It's definitely not a perfect game, and I do feel like some of the reviews were like super harsh with the game. But I feel like this game's definitely worth trying if you're a Ghost Rider fan, or even if you like hack and slash games. Worst case scenario, you end up hating the bike levels. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today, my friends. As always, thanks for being here, thanks for supporting the channel, and I guess I'm going to see you guys very soon. So yeah, don't miss the upcoming X-Men Legends video. So thanks for watching and see you guys soon. Take care, friends.
Freeze, mutie!
Hey, bub, you should have called in sick today.